Your alumni love helping students and fellow graduates, but they simply don't have time to attend every event, answer every call, or learn yet another online platform. With Protopia, making an impact is easier than it's ever been before. Ever. There's no new app to sign up for or use in our already busy lives. Students, alumni, or even staff can quickly ask for advice or networking via a simple form, email, or text. Protopia's artificial intelligence searches the institution's existing alumni data to find the best experts that are the most likely to assist based on experience, availability, location, and other factors. Each matched alum receives a direct, blind email to ask them to help, giving alumni full control over if and how they want to respond, whether that's by email, call, or a virtual meeting. And if it's not a good time, Protopia's AI simply reaches out to the next alum until the question has been answered. The student receives advice right into her email inbox and is coached to engage the alum to grow her professional network. Finally, our rich dashboard lets staff follow along, view detailed engagement analytics, and access updated alumni data. Protopia. Simple for them, simple for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for listening to Alumless World for today, March 7th, 2025. This is the Engaging Global Alumni and Institutional Priorities Edition. My name is Ryan Catherwood. I am here with my fantastic Alumless World co-host, Nicole Kempton. Hey, Nicole, what's going on?
Hello. I'm great.
Happy Friday. We're recording this on a Wednesday, but happy Friday nonetheless.
Yeah.
On the show,
sure
we talk about
Friday in advance.
Yeah. Let's make every day feel like a Friday, you know? On Alumless World, we talk about constituent engagement strategies and education advancement from a global perspective, while on Alumless, which we host every other week, our topics and discussions are very United States centric. On Alumless World, we try to take a broader view of advancement and how colleges, universities, and international schools are working to build a culture of engagement and philanthropy. Nicole and I are both consultants with Chris Marshall Advancement Consulting. We've done projects with over 200 colleges, universities, and secondary schools, and other types of nonprofit organizations. And we offer completely bespoke solutions for advancement strategies. I live in the United States. Nicole lives over in London. And what's going on in London today, Nicole?
Oh, not too much. It's actually the sun's been out, which is rare. Excited to be here. So we publish a new episode of Alumless World every other Friday at 11:30 a.m. GMT. And similar to the original Alumless, if you're a listener there, we publish a 30-minute show on LinkedIn. And then we do an additional 30-minute bonus segment, which is available on the Alumless World podcast feed. You can also catch us on YouTube as well. And if you're listening to us by podcast, we really appreciate if you would add us to your feed. And if you feel so inclined, leave a review. And we also invite you to follow Chris Marshall Advancement Consulting, or CMAC, on LinkedIn, because we publish a lot of great content there. And job opportunities and all sorts of stuff. And we're grateful to Max Lyson and the team at Protopia for being our Alumless World presenting sponsor today.
Absolutely. Well, all right, let's get the show started. Nicole, we have a great guest today, Jo Gardner from Imperial College London. Tell us a little bit about Jo.
We do. Jo is the director of Alumni Engagement at Imperial College right here in London. And Jo is a really innovative leader in the sector here. And when I asked around to different advancement colleagues about people who we should interview, her name bubbled up several times. So I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from Jo today.
Awesome. Well, let's bring Jo out to the stream. Hey, Jo, how's it going?
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Nicole. That was very kind of you to say that, and thanks so much for inviting me to come along. It's a real pleasure to be part of this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for being here. And maybe you could start out, Jo, telling us kind of what drew you to alumni engagement work in the first place, and could you tell us a little bit about Imperial and the work that you do there?
Sure. So I was trained as a teacher back in the day, and kind of ended up working in various community projects. I worked for a museum within the city of Plymouth in Devon, and I'd say that was very much about taking the kind of rich history of the city and putting it into the community and bringing different groups of people together, whether or not that was kind of within education or various sort of community groups on the radio. It was all about kind of sharing stories. And I think that then just gave me this real passion for working within communities. So for me, it was very much about that. I didn't know anything about kind of alumni engagement as a thing at that point in my career. I don't think it was a huge thing, to be honest, in the UK at the time. And then I started working for London 2012 within their kind of legacy projects, which was a great opportunity to do the same. So it was really about bringing communities together, focused around kind of sports, arts. And then I found myself in a university, and then I started understanding a little bit more about alumni engagement. So community, what does that look like? How do you utilize that within an institution? So, you know, various time goes on in my career, often find myself working in universities. And then I came to London, and after a couple of years, I found Imperial, and it was 2016, and Imperial had a brand new American president and an American vice president of advancement, which was a brand new division essentially, and they were bringing together alumni engagement, philanthropy, operations and events, which was actually quite unique because we had public events, VIP events and graduation sitting within a wider context of advancement. And then I guess my own role within that, I've sort of helped build and develop the programmatic side of things. So we were very, very tiny professional function, I'd say, at that point. So I sort of came in at a time where investment was getting pumped into advancement to bring us into sort of a professionalized department or division, as we call ourselves. So I have a team of around 12 staff within the central team, and then we have an arm which is the business school. So there's 6 focused at the business school as well, but their role is really to look at kind of the enhanced offering of that business school. So yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. Jo, were you the first alumni leader of the team there, or had there been a program before and you just were brought in during that period of investment to really kind of modernize and grow it?
So I don't think there was ever a director of alumni engagement until the new structure was formed in around 2015. And actually it was the director who had been the head of the business school alumni relations team who came across to become the director of the alumni engagement offering right across the university. So I was one of kind of the first in her team centrally, and then we worked very closely together in that sort of expansion of the team, expansion of programs, bringing kind of along departments and alumni, and kind of bringing the groups together as well, and really letting them know who we were, what our ambitions were, and where the university was hoping to go.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think listeners will recognize Imperial as one of the top universities in the world, and at present, you have a relatively new leader in Hugh Brady, who came to that role in 2022, as well as a new vice president of advancement, Kristen Blanchfield, who started very recently, as I understand it, just over the last few weeks. Can you talk a little bit about the strategic direction of the university and how you've been rolling out all these new changes with leadership to alumni?
Sure. So we were joined by President Hugh Brady in August 2022, and he launched his strategy, which is called Science for Humanity, in March last year. So as part of that sort of strategic consultation, he involved the alumni community as well as various other partners as well. So we were trying to gather a lot of feedback from our alumni community to ensure that the direction he wanted to go in was correct, and it was kind of forming this opinion along the way. So he felt that the Science for Humanity strategy should really be answering the question, how do we maximize our potential as a force for good in the world? That strategy itself has 9 initiatives. And we have selected 4 of those initiatives that we really feel aligned to our alumni programming that we've been working on for the past, few years, really, that's been evolving, but certainly over the past year to really focus down on 4 of those initiatives. And they are Imperial Global, Imperial Futures, Imperial Innovates, and Imperial Inspires. I might talk a little bit more about some of those as we move along, but what makes them really interesting is they kind of bring together what was the academic strategy for Imperial and create this shop window for all the brilliant things that we do here around sustainability and climate change and human and artificial intelligence and space and security and health and impact. So all of those kind of formations around different areas of that work. One of those pieces that I was just mentioning around those kind of 4 shop windows are creating something called the Schools of Convergent Science. So there'll be 4 which each represent those areas. And it really is about how do we take multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary research, which is done so well at Imperial, and really be leading the kind of conversation around all those things for the future. So that Science for Humanity piece is really important. And I think it gives us a really great story to tell our community, to be honest. And I think that's something that's really shifted with President Brady's kind of impact and some of the things that he's done. He's really created quite big, impactful statements and directions as he's come into Imperial. And this strategy and that sense of Science for Humanity is really one of them.
I love that concept of a shop window. I love that as a metaphor because you're inviting people in, right? That's the whole idea, is that, you're bringing people in from the street and kind of trying to show them what's inside, right? And get them excited about what's inside. I love that.
Yeah. And I think what's really important is, we sort of talk about the time is now, and Imperial has been very conservative in its way of presenting itself in the past, and perhaps doesn't shout about all of the brilliant research that it does, all of the incredible startups, for example, that our alumni create, that really are globally impactful. And I think that in itself has given us this chance to really talk about it. But we've now been ranked second by the QS World Rankings, second in the world behind MIT. And I think that's partially that sense of being a STEM institution and really having that drive and direction, but ultimately really holding on to the fact that we're here, we're now, this is our ranking, this is where we're at. We are really excellent as an institution, and now is the time to shout about it. So one of the other things that President Brady has done is brought in a new brand. So, it's no longer kind of Imperial College, which a lot of people have sort of continued to call it. It's Imperial as an is. And then it's kind of still labeled within that brand Imperial College London. So it's been a really interesting journey, again, bringing on our alumni community on that journey as well, to be like, what do you think of the term Imperial? Let's talk about that. Let's, bring it into the fore. How do people feel about that term? And, what do you think of this brand? We're going in this direction. So it's been a real consultative opportunity to engage our alumni community in.
Yeah. Well, and certainly change, it can sometimes be difficult, right? For lots of stakeholders, and in our line of work, I think that would definitely be true. Broadly speaking, have you found alumni receptive of this new strategic plan and the new brand? And then maybe you could share a little bit about how you're integrating the Imperial Futures program priority, which I've got no doubt you've been iterating with your alumni, and talk about the alumni engagement initiatives that are part of that program.
Yeah, sure. And you're right. Change is always difficult, and everyone has an opinion, right? I think we're at a point now where it's settled in. I mean, I'd say still internally, you know, we talk about it a lot. We talk about the strategy a lot. And then when I talk to another colleague, for example, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's strategy. I'm like, what do you mean it's not on the, you know, tip of your tongue all the time? But it's just impacting different people in different ways. With regards to Imperial Futures, it's actually a really useful one for me to be able to articulate some of the things that we're doing to try and sort of reflect that sense of those 4 schools of convergent science and the idea of multidisciplinary convergence. So we are delivering something called, so 2 initiatives. One's called Imperial Insights, and one is essentially affinity networks. So the first 2 schools which are being really focused on is sustainability and climate change and human and artificial intelligence. And then the other 2 will come kind of slightly later down the line. But we have been working with the co-directors of those schools to put on Alumni Insights panels. So we reach out directly to our alumni community who are working in kind of a niche area of that kind of theme, should we say, and we bring them to a panel. We have a chair of the co-director who then works with those alumni directly to really have that boots on the ground kind of feedback and you know, rich discussion really around what is going on actually on the ground, and certainly from a research perspective, that's really unique opportunity for the co-directors to have that conversation. And then our alumni are really interested, right? You know, these are really important topics for our future, so they want to come and hear this stuff. They're really keen to hear this. So that in itself has been interesting. We also charge for our events, and that in itself, we were like, how are people going to feel about this? And you know, they were really keen to it's not a donation, it's just purely kind of a commitment fee, something for us to be able to feel like we're going to get the bums on seats. But it's been really popular and well received. The other thing around the affinity networks is focusing on those 2 schools as well, those 2 themes. We will be bringing alumni together. So we've just done a recruitment round. So we've got like over 100 applications for our alumni to get involved in setting up a committee for each of these areas of convergence. And to be able to then work with the co-directors to ensure that the people that are being recruited are then being kind of fed into, you know, bringing about that mutual benefit, right? So they're really being fed into the ecosystem of what's going on with these schools of convergent science. So that's just kind of two of the initiatives we're working on with that.
I wanted to just ask quickly, Jo, there is a campaign, right? Connected to these initiatives underneath the broad spectrum of the strategic plan, or is there one forthcoming? Tell us where you are in sort of campaign mode, if you will.
Sure. So this will be actually Imperial's first campaign eventually when we get there. So we are currently in the silent kind of part. And then we will go to launch in the next couple of years. So it's the first, as I said, it's the first campaign. But what President Brady's vision really was to have the new strategy, the new brand, and the campaign that are just kind of like all holding something new together for driving forward that future. So with the new VP, Kristen Blanchfield, in post now, which we're absolutely thrilled about, she's really got that strong task now to start moving us into the direction of a public campaign, which, as I say, is new. And I think a lot of work has been done over the past 10 years to try and shift the dial on the culture of philanthropy at Imperial, and not having a campaign, like a direct major campaign in the past, I think really has, how would I put it? I guess we need to kind of bring ourselves into what the future will look like for UK universities, really. Certainly in London.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sorry, what bit?
Just about the UK context, because some of our listeners, might not be as aware of like what's happening in the UK.
So I guess the thing with the UK is, for many people may know or may not know. So UK education was free higher education was free up until 1998. When tuition fees came in at the time, they seemed incredibly expensive at like £1,000 a year. And now they're, hitting £10,000+ a year. So times have changed quite significantly. Obviously, the funding, the support from government was massively reduced, meaning that tuition fees needed to come in. We then, as a culture, have gone through Brexit, which has meant that European students that we had lots of have now decided to stay in Europe to study, because they would have had to have paid international student fees as opposed to kind of European Union fees, essentially, which is the same as the UK at the time. So universities now are really having to kind of pivot and become much more aligned to philanthropic support and international student fees. So building their recruitment pipelines in order to be sustainable ultimately into the future. I think that's where we have had to professionalize, and where this sector has kind of grown quite a lot over the past 10 years in the UK is because of that changing landscape, and what ultimately doesn't look great, with everything that happened with COVID. It's just been kind of, one thing after the other. There's been many universities who are now in dire straits, really, to get through, and it's concerning.
Yeah, and that increasing need for philanthropy as well, right? I mean, that takes a long time to cultivate, and a lot of effort to cultivate. I've got a question for Ryan. You've worked with a lot of universities that are in different stages of their campaign, and from your perspective, what should institutions be thinking about when they're trying to engage alumni in the campaign priority areas or in the institutional priority areas more broadly?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it's a lot of the schools that we work with are very much working to articulate a campaign goal for engagement, which is somewhat new in the advancement space. I think traditionally campaigns have had a dollar goal, and that goal has really been the defining characteristic of the campaign and what everybody is working towards. And I think schools that are really thinking about how to build community and momentum and pipeline over the course of a longer time horizon are thinking about Jo and the work of her team as critically important to the success of the campaign. And they're therefore thinking about really how to ensure that from an external perspective, a campaign goal can help really bring people in, because we all know that sometimes the success of campaigns are built on the backs of a few people making huge multi-million-dollar gifts, right, to the university, which is incredibly important. But that for the 95% of alumni or other stakeholders who can't make a $1 million gift, how do we make them feel included in the campaign? And so I think engagement goals really are about that other 95%. How do we set goals around volunteer hours or volunteer participation? How do we set goals for, other types of engagement increases? And the other part of that is to make sure that Jo and her team, or those working on alumni teams, also feel like they're part of the campaign. And it's not just the work of the development officers who are responsible for the success of campaigns. So I think, it's really what are lofty but achievable engagement goals that not only help drive engagement and participation and stimulate engagement from an external perspective, but also from an internal perspective to make sure that everyone in the university, particularly the alumni team, feels like they're a part of the campaign.
Yeah, I love that. And Jo, I love the Imperial Insights. I think it's such an interesting way of kind of leveraging alumni expertise, in a really meaningful volunteer opportunity, like Ryan's kind of talking about, that gets them. I mean, they're the proof of concept in terms of maximizing the potential of science for humanity, right? So yeah, that's a cool way to get them involved.
Thank you.
So let's pivot a little bit and talk about the Imperial alumni community, because it's a very globally dispersed alumni community. And what does that look like? And how do you, as an alumni leader there, adapt your engagement strategy to such a global audience? And what are some of the kind of unique challenges and opportunities that you have there?
So at Imperial, we have 262 roughly 1,000 alumni who are dispersed internationally. The top 5 nationalities are English, followed by Chinese, French, Greek, and then Indian. About 50% of our alumni community are British, and the rest are international. So how do we engage with them? So we kind of focus our programming, really, those services and benefits, in person, hybrid, and online. Is probably just the best way for me to kind of define how we're trying to engage them, because it is a challenge and can be difficult when you have such a dispersed community. So our in-person activity is structured around our events and volunteering programs, as one would expect. So we travel internationally alongside the president and various academics to engage the community. So for example, when the president's traveling, it's maybe much bigger and kind of larger delegations, and we involve our alumni community on the ground, who are our international group leaders, for example, and we put on major events. And kind of smaller roundtable dinners as well. And then when perhaps our academics are traveling, we'll sometimes put on events that are slightly larger, depending on what's taking place and whether or not it strategically fits. Or we will work with our groups, who will then kind of get used to hosting our academics on the ground. So they might do a pint with a prof, for example, and be like, come along to this pub at this time, and then we'll sort of advertise all of that. And then we have that volunteering opportunities piece around mentoring, around kind of coaching. So we do lots of coaching programs with our alumni. So more experienced alumni will then we'll sort of train them to be coaches, and then they will coach more recent graduates as well within kind of career focused activity. And your typical kind of leading alumni groups activity. So the in-person is very much the initiatives, the projects, the events that are taking place. We're also super fortunate in the fact that we have an online alumni visitor center on campus. And that space in itself can hold up to 30 alumni and their guests. So they come in, it's a space for them to work. We are amazingly located in South Kensington, and we have Exhibition Road at our fingertips. So that's the Natural History Museum, the V&A Museum, the Science Museum, the Royal Albert Hall, Hyde Park. It's a stunning location. So for our alumni to have that opportunity, they might be traveling with their families, for example. They might come onto campus and have cups of tea or chat, show their children, for example, where they came to university, or we've got like young professionals working in the space directly. So it's a really interesting hub of activity there based on the campus. And then we have kind of our hybrid. So that's much more about our lifelong learning programs and online activity that we might be delivering, and volunteering initiatives that are based online. So we can do those coaching pieces all over the world as well. And then our online series of benefits, like our online alumni community, an email address, webinars, event recordings, online resources, things like that. So that's kind of how we try and break it down. But it is difficult at times to really feel like you're able to be that full spread on a global scale, to make sure that you're trying to engage as many people as possible. And I think personally, that's where we really lean back into what is the story of the Science for Humanity? How does that resonate with people? How do you really bring them on the journey? We know that there are huge global problems that we have to solve and that we have to work through now more than ever. And really being able to bring them along on that journey with us, I think is a great story to be able to tell.
That gives you such an advantage to have a clear articulation and strategic plan, right? That shop window to work on, that gives you the guideposts to formulate those strategies and goals and tactics to bring to life that strategic plan in your campaign.
And I
Well,
think
we've got
our-
to put.
sorry,
Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, I think our communications work that we do as well is very, very tailored. We have, many email addresses, and it's very much a case of how do we share this message from a communications perspective. So that one in itself, as being able to shout about the story as much as possible, is really important. We have a magazine that we send twice a year as well. So that's our kind of postal campaign to make sure that alumni are up to date and understand what's going on.
Awesome. Well, hard to believe, but we've bumped up against our time here for our live broadcast, which is great. We're going to have one question we're going to carry over to our bonus segment with you, Joe, made available to our podcast listeners of Alumless World. We're going to talk a little bit more about the challenge of engaging different cultures across that global audience of alumni. And we're going to pick up the conversation with Jo Gardner from Imperial College London, Imperial for short, just after the break. But before we do, Nicole, who are we featuring on the next episode of Alumless World?
So next time we'll be hearing from Louis Adekola, who is based in Nigeria and wears many hats in the advancement space in West Africa and the UK. And I think we're in for a really entertaining conversation and informative conversation with him. So really looking forward to that.
So I didn't catch that. Joe, did you catch Nicole's?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right. So maybe it was just me. All right. So I can edit that out. That's the good news of podcasts and video, right? Pre-recording. Okay. So we will be back with Jo Gardner from Imperial after the break.